Heart-Sutra.
Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara Lielukojies patiesajā būtībā un iemīlis vispārākās gudrības dzīve skaidri ieraudzīja, ka pieci kopumi ir tukši un tā pārvarēja visas ciešanas. Šariputra krāsa neatšķiras no tukšuma, tukšums no krāsas, krāsa ir tukšums, tukšums krāsa. Tieši tāpat arī sajūtas, izšķirtspējas, darbības un apziņa. Šariputra visas dharmas ir tukši tēli, tās nerodas un neizsūd, neaptraipas un neattīras, nevairojas un nesarūk. Tāpēc tukšumā nav ne krāsu, ne sajūtu, ne izšķirtspēju, ne darbību, ne apziņas, nav acu, ausu, deguna, mēles, ķermeņa un doma, nav krāsu, skaņu, smaržu, garšu, taustes un darmu, nav ne tikai maņu, tvērumu, lauka, nav arī domu, apziņa, lauka, nav ne tikai neskaidrības, nav arī neskaidrības, izveikšanas un pat ne dzīvības, nav ne nāves, ne arī to izveikšanas, nav ciešanu, cēloņu, izdzēšanas un ceļa, nav zināšanu, nav iegūšanas, nav iegūstamās. Visi bodhisattvas balstās vispārākajā gudrībā, tāpēc sirds prātam nav šķēršļu un bez šķēršļiem nav arī baiļu. Tālu prom no atšķārnām iedomām, pilnīgā nirvāna, visu trīslaiku Buddhas balstās vispārākajā gudrībā un sasniedz nepārspējamu, pilnīgu apskaidrību. Tāpēc zini, ka šī ir dižā svētuma mantra, dižā skaidrības mantra, vispārākā un ne ar ko nesalīdzināma. Tā spēj izskaust visas ciešanas, ir patiesa, nav maldi, tāpēc to sauc par vispārākās gudrības mantru, un tā skan šādi: gāte, gāte, pārāgāte, pārsamgāte, bodhisattva. For the first Teisho of this week, on this Monday morning, we will hear about Mumon, Mumon, as he is called in Japanese tradition. He is an old Zen master of the 13th century. He's a contemporary of Dogen. He was born a little earlier than Dogen and lived a little longer. And he is the author of the famous koan collection Mumon. His name is No Gate Prajna Clear, translated. So No-Gate Prajna Clear, author of the No-Gate Gateway. It's sort of typical for his kind of humor that he would call his koan collection also with the same name that is given to him. So, No-Gate, No-Gate Gateway. Could be an analogy. If I would have been the collector of these koans, we could say it's Jürgen's gateway. But that's just one meaning, one possible meaning. The other meaning is that's a no-gate gateway, so a passing through a barrier with no gate at all. So it's actually what it's depicted most often is the barrier without the gate. No gate, gateway. So we will hear about this more. Who was Mumon? Before we go into more this reflection or this approach to what he was standing for. Mumon was a quirky Chan master in China, the southern Sung dynasty. He was a monk within the Rinzai or Lembke lineage. Was formerly a monk, had Dharma transmission, and then is depicted in some stories as a guy with long hair, a long beard, and disheveled robes, traveling from Zen monastery to Zen monastery to deepen his understanding. He also is said to have had no shyness of making himself dirty, engaging in dirty labor, cleaning toilets, working in the fields, getting dusty. And yet, he was obviously also a personality that gained attention and appreciation within the communities he visited. And at age 64, he obviously, being by then a famous Zen teacher, was asked by the emperor, which we could also see ordered by the emperor, to build a monastery near the capital, which he agreed to do, and served as an abbot of this temple, this monastery, for another decade before he retired in his 70s, 4 years before he was following the vanishing way of things, as it is so poetically framed in Zen words. So, following the vanishing way of things, meaning before he died at age 78. During his life, he was really committed to help people gain insight. Gathering the koans, these 48 koans that are part of his koan collection, all served the purpose to help students of the way to deepen their understanding, gain insight, and also, digest and integrate these insights into a way, a life of practice, of devoted practice, on the one hand of Buddhism, but just as much practice and integration in the long existing tradition of Taoist thinking and life practice. A life practice that is always embedded in this question of ontology and cosmology that's so typical for Taoist thinking and feeling and practice. A practice that is also expressed in the following poem. The great way is a single absence gate. Here, on 1,000 roads of presence. Once through this gateway you wander, all heaven and earth in a single stride. So in these 4 lines of this poem come together the Taoist notion of a constant dance of absence. In the original poem, the word for absence is wu, or mu in Japanese. And it's this gate of wu, of not, or nothing, or absence. And heaven, or presence, on the other side. Presence representing the 10,000 things of the manifest forms and sounds, the scientific realm, which we can measure and experience, opposed to absence. Once through this gateway, you wander all heaven and earth in a single stride. And if we don't understand these things, absence and presence, or emptiness and form, as it is said in the Heart-Sutra, as 2 separate things, then they come together, and passing through this gateway freely, heaven and earth are united, and we walk them in a single stride. So that's sort of his testimony, or his inheritance, that he passes on with his teachings. He is collecting the koans and also contributing to these koans these commentaries that are highly valued as literary masterpieces of Chinese tradition. So let's shortly come back to the word of Wu, which is also part of his name, but is also part of this Taoist thinking, this way of experiencing one aspect. Wu not only is the grammar word for no or nothing or not, it's also like a verb, the absence that is occurring. It's not just a noun absence. It's a verb presence is a word. So that's probably one of the more significant differences also to our Western thinking, which is very much oriented on subject and object and nouns, and we do things with nouns. But here, absence is a verb. The verb for not tangible, not definable, whereas presence is the word for that comes from absence and goes back to it. And it's more like this unity we also encounter in yin and yang, the constant dance of absence and presence. So this wu, this no, we also encounter in the term wu wei, so non-acting, where just out of absence something occurs without intention, without a goal, like, grabbing the pillow in our sleep, putting it right, and no intention, no cognitive function involved, just occurs, wu wei. Another term, wu sheng, not living, not born, just coming forth, existing beyond existence. In that regard, we can also make or relate to the term of John of the Cross, the word nada, which obviously etymologically has the root of non nata, the non or not born. It's really remarkable, this connections of understanding that somewhere beyond our everyday naming things, the unborn embraces many cultures also. So, leaving these thoughts for the moment aside, let's turn towards koan practice. Koan practice is concerned with working on public cases. That's what means koan. A public case where we encounter a situation, mostly encounter between a few monks, a master and a monk, two masters who present a situation in which we encounter these different aspects of the reality. The absence or the absolute aspect, and the present or the relative aspect of life, of existence. Often, especially in the West, there's a lot of talk about koan or rationally not solvable riddles. I think that's quite a flat understanding of what koans are. Like legal cases that are published, for instance, in the publication of a municipality, where they describe, this occurred, and then we had to deal with it such and such, in a rather legal language, which lawyers and politicians may understand. We could also say, oh yeah, that's a rationally not solvable riddle. But we just have to know the language and engage in it, and then it becomes rather clear. And so it's also when we really engage with the language of koan and what they deal with, it's not so much a riddle, it's just the presentation of how things in the context of Zen and practice are depicted. So, and if we dive deep and become one with this situation, then it also becomes rather clear what it is all about. David Stanton, the author of China Root, who writes a lot about the context of Taoist literature and thought in the arising and development of Zen, writes in regard to what the essence of meditation is. In its essence, meditation means sitting quietly and watching thoughts come and go in a field of silent emptiness. From this attention to thought's movement comes meditation's first revelation. That is, that we are not, as a matter of observable fact, our thoughts and memories, defining us as fundamentally separate from the empirical cosmos. Instead, we are the empty awareness that watches identity rehearsing itself in thoughts and memories, relentlessly coming and going. So it's just this unity of empty awareness that watches identity rehearsing itself in thoughts and memories relentlessly. It's just continuing. Something that's often depicted also in Zen literature or in Zen koans also as the wave and the ocean. So something that's just going on and on and on. Back to Mumon, who himself, when he started off with Zen practice, himself had to start working on the koan Mu. So you remember those who were here in May, when I gave a Teisho on the koan as a dog Buddha nature, where a monk comes to the famous Zen master Jochu and asks him in sincerity, does a dog have Buddha nature? And the answer of Jochu then was Mu, which of course we could understand as no or not, but also as a hint to don't lose yourself in neither nor. If we take a dog apart, do we find Buddha nature? But we have to clarify this question very deeply. And it's said that women had to struggle 6 years with this koan before having realization on the true nature, not just of the dog, but all that comes with solving that deep question. of, what is that mood? What is this absence? What is that no or non-born, and all related questions. It's also said that after having this realization, a few days after, he, as was the tradition, wrote a poem on his realization. And that poem has 4 lines of 5 words, pictograms, and that pictogram or that poem goes like this: Wu, 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 or absence, 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 absence. Or you could also say no absence, no absence, no absence, and so on and so on. And again, when I read this poem, I came to mind also that, for instance, Bernhard Stappel, who you know was also from very early on part of Via Integralis, and in recent years was working with some of his students on refining the company or the work with the keyword nada, but not as a keyword, just as really a form of dealing with the experience that comes when we deeply meditate. And in this group, we developed the form of reciting, especially in the beginning of an encounter between student and teacher, that they recite together nada, 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 on the top of the mountain, nada, nada, nada. So it's remarkable again, all these different forms that come together so closely. We will, for the rest of the week from tomorrow on, be encountering different koans of the collection that Mumon collected, gathered, and then also commented and also made a poem on each koan. That will be from tomorrow on. Today I would like to close with a part of Mumon's Mumon Kan, which is called Mumon's Zen-Warnings. It's not in every edition of the Mumon Kan, but I found it in one of the English versions where he is expressing some warnings on how to practice. And I think that's a good way to end this Teisho today. Okay then, let's continue with Mumon's Zen-Warnings, which he wrote out of his spirit of Sometimes we don't really know, is it humor? Is it sarcasm? What it certainly does is it doesn't leave us much room for moving and finding a way, because he really tries to corner us in our practice again and again. So let's hear this first line. To obey the rules and regulations is to tie yourself without a rope. Yesterday in the introduction we heard how important it is that we follow the rules and regulations, how we move around in the Zendo and outside the Zendo, to really support our practice as a group. And so when he says to obey the rules and regulations is to tie yourself with a rope. It's on the one hand, it's our decision to follow the rules and regulations freely. But if we become slaves of rules and regulations and look at each other and ourselves sort of with the eye of the slave overseer, then it's tying ourselves without a rope, but it's still a rope, the inner rope. And then he continues, to act freely and without restraint is heresy and deviltry, so work of the devil. If we don't also restrain us, if we just come and think, oh, I'm so free and nothing matters, then our practice will not flourish. And furthermore, we also diminish the efforts of others. To be aware of the mind, making it pure and quiet, is the false Zen of silent contemplation. So again, when we try to achieve something that's outside of us, something that is not right here, right now, then it's the false Zen of silent contemplation. Pretending something or wanting to attain something that it is not. Zen is always tangible, right here, right now. To arbitrarily ignore causal relations is to fall into a deep pitfall. So if we ignore the obvious, so if I read things and distract myself and ignore the effect it has on myself and others, then I fall into a deep pitfall. So the Sesshin framework is all about holding upright this atmosphere of sincere practice. And to that belongs also that we really are attentive to detail. To abide in absolute awakening with no darkening is to wear chains without a yoke. This again, we are often warned in Koan. Often it's rising up on top of a flagpole, and then you're asked to make a step forward. Where being on the flagpole represents having some fancy enlightenment experience, but without darkening or coming back into everyday life, then we are just as well bound in chains and wearing a heavy yoke. And goes on, thinking of good and evil as being in heaven and hell. It's a bit different image that we usually have. Remember in Genesis, state of paradise, and the warning, do not eat from that fruit of the tree of distinction of good and evil. Here it's another picture that's painted. So in the Asian tradition, heaven and hell are no good places to be. In heaven we have just everything, we are just full to the brim with good food, niceties, and just super warm and cozy environment. So much so that we don't even care to love ourselves or liberate ourselves and others. So in that regard, it's not much different to hell. Next one, to have views about the Buddha and the Dharma is to be imprisoned inside two iron mountains. So if we have the feeling, just being devotional towards Buddha or the Dharma and its teachings, and are not connected to the tangible, real world, then we're again caught up inside two iron mountains. A wonderful picture for how many ways there are to get caught up in things. Practicing concentration in quiet sitting is an action of devils. So, what does it need more if we sit silently, quiet sitting? And then we come and say, we have to practice concentration. Concentration that we train also in Zazen, which is sitting in concentration, but we want to double it. If we already are sitting quietly, aware, and still nourish this notion of not enough, more, then that's an action of the devils. If you go forward, you will go astray from the essence, he says further. If you go forward, you go astray from the essence. Many of you have read the book Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by Shunryu Suzuki. In that we read, that it's also about just breathing, being aware, and as soon as we want to progress, to become experts, then we lose an essential part of practice. Being aware, awake, and also this awe for a little bit of surprise and wonder that we can encounter in our practice. The next warning, if you go back, you oppose the principle. So if we want to freeze some state of mind, some attainment we might have or think we have had, then we lose the essence. And the essence of the principle is nothing remains. It's continuously changing. principle is unfolding. But if you neither go forward nor back, you are a dead person breathing. So again, he is just cornering us. There's no way out, is there? Tell me, what will you do? I will ask you this during Doxa. Here, before we go back to Kinyin and continue our practice, I just invite you, make the utmost effort to attain full realization in this life. Or, that's his words, do not abide in misery forever. So it's really no bad thing to have a nourished wish for liberation. I hope you and I will always keep in mind these Zen-Warnings by Mumon.